All right, so as Democrats continue to be firmly on track for a 2022 midterm bloodbath, President Joe Biden's personal approval rating continues to plummet. Now, I told you guys this months ago, but apparently now the mainstream press is just catching up to this trend. But his main fall off that he has been seeing demographically has been overwhelmingly from young people who are jumping ship in the wake of essentially his entire mildly left-wing economic platform getting completely eviscerated by corporate Democrats within his own party. But hear from Chris Cillizza, of all people, of course it's this motherfucker, giving us a very confused take as to what exactly is going on here. So just a little breakdown here and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. He says, Joe Biden's numbers are collapsing amongst a group that you really wouldn't expect. Okay. He says young Americans have turned on Joe Biden. Is that really unexpected to these people? But they say that's a shocking finding of a Gallup analysis of its polling over the breadth of Biden's term released this week. And he says in the early days of Biden's presidency from January 2021 to June of 2021, an average of 6 in 10 adult members of Gen Z, those born between 1997 and 2004, approved of the job that Biden was doing. So 60% approval rating amongst Gen Z people. But he continues saying during the period spanning September of 2021 to March of 2022, that number had plummeted to just an average of 39%. And they say among millennials, those born between 1981 and 96, the collapse is similarly stark. Biden's approval rating among that group stood at 60% in aggregated Gallup numbers in the first half of 2021 compared to 41% more recently. And they say that loss in confidence among young people was interestingly not as steep among older age groups. And over that same period, Biden's approval rating among baby boomers, those born between 1946 and 1964, dipped by only 7 points. And among traditionalists, those born before 1946, his approval rating was unchanged. So you see the dynamic here, the political situation that Biden has found himself in, okay? He runs as this centrist moderate candidate as opposed to Bernie Sanders, who is running on a massively popular policy platform, especially amongst young people. And just as a reminder, young people overwhelmingly showed up and voted for Bernie Sanders in numbers. So it's not really a surprise that somebody who ran his entire campaign against the scary radical leftist proposals of Bernie Sanders would not be that popular among young people to begin with. But it seems like, according to the data, that young people, especially Gen Z and millennials, did give Biden the benefit of the doubt, because he essentially tried to have some half-assed compromises where he said, I'm going to support the public option, I'm going to do the $15 minimum wage, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and he completely failed to do any of those things. So, again, not that surprising when you fail to pass the policies that you were promising voters, especially young voters, when you fail to enact the big, bold, leftist economic, healthcare, and social welfare reforms that young people overwhelmingly are in favor of. Then why the fuck would you ever be surprised that they are jumping ship? I mean, it's just a simple matter of Biden failing to deliver on the economic needs of young people. It's really that simple. But again, the mainstream media is just completely out of their minds, confused as to how this could possibly happen. But just to put it in perspective in terms of how absolutely insane these numbers actually are. So here from Will Stansel, he points out that Biden's approval among 18 to 34-year-olds is literally lower than Trump's was in the same Quinnipiac poll in March of 2018. Hard to overstate what a shocking failure this is for a Democratic administration. So lower than Donald Trump's was at this same time during his presidency. Just an absolutely catastrophic failure. But again, it's not that surprising when you see all of these different, semi-good, semi-progressive policy initiatives that were promised to the American people get torn to shreds. I mean, you can't just run on a platform, completely fail to pass everything on that platform, and then turn around and do like a shocked Pikachu face and be like, well, why are people not supporting me anymore? Well, this is why, because you promise things like this, some of the top priorities for young people, addressing climate change. What's the latest on that? I mean, we have a single millionaire coal baron from West Virginia named Joe Manchin, who is personally profiting from his stake in a dirty coal company that he runs in West Virginia, and he's simultaneously sitting on the climate committees and tearing every single piece of climate legislation into shreds that comes across his desk. So you're allowing a millionaire coal baron to completely prevent any action on what is one of, if not the single top issue for young people in climate change. So you're not making any, forward progression on this issue. So why would you expect people to support you? They continue with childcare and universal pre-K. Again, things that Joe Biden promised that were within Build Back Better that were then completely eviscerated by members of his own party. Medicare expansion, extended child tax credit, 4 weeks of paid family and medical leave, immigration, housing and healthcare provisions, 2 years of free community college, cutting prescription drugs, taxing the rich. All of these different things are overwhelmingly popular with not only young people, but the entire fucking country, and you failed to get it done. So why would you expect that people would just continue to support you by default when you completely failed to pass the main policies that you were promising people? Again, you would think that this wouldn't have to be said or that it wouldn't be that complicated, but not really surprising that a guy who said shit like this in the past would be somewhat out of touch with what young people want. So just as a reminder here from back in 2018, he said similar shit to this during the 2020 campaign, but Biden on young people complaining they have it tough, give me a break. So here's what he said. The younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break. No, I have no empathy for it. Give me a break. Okay, this is what happens when you have a gerontocracy of, a political leadership class that has an average age of like 77, okay? Of course, they're not going to have sympathy for younger generations, and of course, they're going to try to cling to whatever power that they have left at their disposal in order to prevent the actual economic, healthcare, social welfare reforms that young people are overwhelmingly in favor of, because their power, the power that has accumulated over the entire course of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's career, has been built on a foundation of fiscal austerity and working alongside Republicans on some of the worst pieces of legislation that led to a lot of the problems that young people are facing right now. Just as a reminder, we're talking about Joe Biden here, okay? The guy who helped write the bankruptcy legislation that helped to balloon the student debt problem that we have right now for young people, while he simultaneously is then turning around years later and refusing to use his authority, his executive unilateral authority, to cancel that student debt that he helped to create in the first place. This is a guy who wrote the crime bill that helped lead to mass incarceration in this country. This is a guy who helped to push for free trade agreements that shipped everybody's jobs overseas, like NAFTA. This is a guy who voted for the Iraq War. This is a guy who built his entire political career creating the insecurities that millions and millions of young Americans are facing right now, and then he turns around and again acts surprised that young people are jumping ship when we see exactly what you actually represent and what you've represented over your entire career. And just to put a final nail on the head here, to put it in full perspective, that this is really just about an economic failure to deliver on people's material concerns that they have right now in the United States. If you go and look at where Biden's approval rating historically through his entire administration peaked, it was literally weeks, okay? It peaked right around here, 55%, roughly on March 23rd of 2021. This was just a couple weeks after he sent out the stimulus checks to the American people, okay? It's not that fucking complicated. Politics is just not as complicated as they want to make it out to be. So this is a current situation that Democrats find themselves in. You have this entire media narrative that has been crafted for basically the entirety of Biden's administration, that he's appeasing too much to the radical, scary leftists, and his administration is secretly being run by AOC and Bernie Sanders, and he needs to move further to the right to make sure that independents and Republicans are going to be willing to maybe shift away from a Donald Trump-like figure or towards away from Republicans in the 2022 midterms. This entire narrative that the mainstream media, that the Democratic leadership class has been crafting throughout this entire process, blaming the left relentlessly, has been complete fucking bullshit. All you have to do is look at where Democrats are losing support. It's amongst young people, and young people overwhelmingly voted for Bernie Sanders. They support bold left-wing economic proposals and healthcare proposals. So that's what they support, and that's who you're losing support from. I don't know, maybe there's a correlation there. Maybe you could actually follow through on any of the actual promises that you told them that you were going to enact as the president or as the Democratic Party. It's not that fucking complicated. Just get some of this shit done with the Build Back Better proposals. If you have to do it one at a time, fine. Put forward a bill on lowering prescription drugs. Allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. There's so many different things that you could do. Cancel student debt, even things that are unilaterally in the hands of Joe Biden himself that he wouldn't even have to use Congress to get passed. He's just refusing to do them. So of course, it's not surprising that young people are jumping ship, and it appears like not only are Democrats not working to undo this trend, but we're actively seeing them double down on the exact same shift rightward that is causing young people to abandon them in the first place.